a talk that we have not hosted before. It's really getting into the people realm, right? So we're talking about dark skies, actually for people as, hi, come in, as well as for pollinators, which we're always concerned about. So for those of you who don't know, Pollinator Project Row Valley, are you able to grab that? Yes, thank you. We are based in Phoenix, right downtown on Main Street. And we're right next to the Cheese Cave, the Oregon Cheese Cave, if you've heard of that. We are now in Suite C. It's quite exciting that we have a whole office suite to ourselves, although we're missing that we don't get to work with Deanna of Bee Sweet Blooms. But we are using already that much larger office, and so we're quite grateful that we're in there. So for those of you who haven't visited us, and there's a few people in the room who haven't, we would welcome you to come to our new suite and see the resources that we have there. We have information about pollinators, we have art, we have things for sale, we have plants to purchase. We have a number of programs, if you're not familiar with us, that we really want to help engage the community in how to save the pollinators by doing one little thing or lots of little things, because they add up. So not only do we do programs like this, which we would call mostly adult education, I think we can say that safely. We also have youth education, Pollinator Pals. We have a program doing that. We have another person coming in the door. So we have youth education. Ethan, who you'll meet in just a minute, goes into schools. We do community events. It's really a great way to get out into the community, the information that we want to share, because we're starting with the littles, and then they actually do grow up to be the older people that can actually make a change with their dollars and the way they design their houses and their yards. So in addition to adult education, doing workshops and field trips, we do the youth education. And then we also have a growing gardens program, which is what we call our nursery, our native plant nursery. And then we also have a demonstration garden. So if you haven't been to our office, we have a large demonstration garden out front and on the side. So we're actually helping to get plants into the ecosystem through people buying them and thinking about how they can help the pollinators. And then we have a Rogue Buzzway project, so people can show, even if they're not really getting engaged with the community, they can still show they're making a difference by putting their garden. Oh yes, I should have that map. We have a Rogue Buzzway program, so you can self-certify your garden and put it on the map, and this is all on our website. So we have a brochure. I guess I could actually show you these brochures. I have a brochure that you can pick up back there, has a link to the website. This is our Pollinator Pals. For those of you that work with young people, work in schools, check us out. We'd love to talk to you. And then here's a Rogue Buzzway brochure that it tells you a little bit more about it. Before I introduce our next speaker, I do want to tell you we have some other events coming up. I would love to have you know about them. We are here to talk about moths, but we have one seat left in our butterfly walk on Mount Ashland coming up on Sunday the 12th. This will be David Lee Meyer's 4th such walk on Mount Ashland. It's a delight. It's for the real lepidopterist type people, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. or thereabouts. You don't have to stay out that long. But it's really great. We also have, speaking of the LEPs, we have a moth night coming up on July 17, which is a Friday, and it's going to be super fun. This is our second time doing this. It's a family-friendly event. It's up at the Crest. There's a brochure or a little flyer back there. And so we'll have moth activities, and we'll look at moths at night. So it goes all the way through 11 o'clock or however long you want to stay up. We also have, for the artists in the room, petals and pollinators. We have a really great artist coming down. Her name is Zeba Thalden. She has a book called The Insect Artist. It's an amazing book. So, and then second Friday is this coming Friday for Phoenix, second Friday Art Walk. So come and see new art on the wall. They were just hanging it today. As Ethan and I were getting ready for this, they're hanging, we just hung beautiful prints by Laura Brubaker. She was at the Rowe Gallery last time, and now she's with us. How about that? And then the last event I wanted to mention for those of you that have kiddos or know about kiddos is we're doing a summer adventure for the first time. It is August, but that was about the best day we could find at our new Children's Learning Garden in Phoenix. We are just excited, and so if you have some interest in that, Ethan has a flyer back there that'll talk to you about it. We are at a library, so we're not selling things, but we do have things in our shop that could be of interest for people, like caterpillars of Western North America. This is butterflies, not moths, but and this is another butterfly thing that the BLM just came out with. We have other things. So that's a little bit about Pollinator Project Rogue Valley. We have a great organization, and we'd love to talk to you. Lots of volunteer opportunities, lots of ways you can support with your dollar. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. And we have the delight of working with Ethan Robinson. Ethan has been with us for 3 years-ish. He is our Pollinator Pals Education Coordinator. And I'm going to ask Ethan to come up and tell us about moth ecology, right?
Yeah. So, my name, like Christina said, my name is Ethan Robinson, and I run our youth education program. I get to yell at kids about bugs. It's great. And one of my favorite bugs to yell about is moths. So we're going to be talking about them, their ecology, and why we're mad at Alan. More on that later. So what is a moth? If we go back a couple, million years, there's this great paper called Phylogenomics Reveals the Evolutionary Timing and Pattern of Butterflies and Moths. So I'll leave that out in case anyone wants to take a picture of it later. It's great, and it shows that the earliest relatives, like the kind of closest relatives to butterflies and moths, are in fact caddisflies. Those little dudes in the creek that use waterproof silk, which we still haven't figured out, to create a casing around their little larvae. We can tell that they're related because they produce that silk, and their wings have a unique adaptation that is, in my opinion, one of my favorite things to teach about. Moths and butterflies are in the order Lepidoptera. And if we break that down, it means scale wings. Scale wings. If we zoom in really close using a microscope, we have one out front that you might have seen when you came in. You can see tiny, tiny scales coating just about every inch or centimeter. It's a more appropriate length for moths since they're tiny. Every part of their body. Those scales have a lot of really unique adaptations. They give them their colors. They fall off if they get caught in a spider web to help them escape. They can muffle bat echolocation. I have my little bat here that my brother gave me that I like to throw at people, but I won't today. These scales are a really fascinating adaptation, and we can see kind of the precursor to them on the wings of caddisflies. So moths, they're neat. And in fact, they are way more numerous than butterflies. The order Lepidoptera has about 160,000 species, with more being discovered every year. And in that order, only 10% of those are butterflies. Now, the best way to tell a difference between moths and butterflies is, bear with me, but everyone kind of stick their arms up a little bit, do a little wiggle. You don't have to if you feel embarrassed, but that would make me feel better. Now make fists. These are your butterfly antennae. Butterflies have, feel free to take a closer look at this poster later, they have clubs at the end of their antennae. It's just a little ball at the end. Moths, on the other hand, are much more diverse. They can have feathered antennae, kind of straight and curly antennae. There are even ones with hollow antennae. And they use those to sniff out plants and mates and gain information about their environment. Now, I threw out that number, 160,000 species of moths and butterflies, but just to contextualize that, there are only 11,000 species of birds and a little over 6,000 species of mammals. So that's a lot of moths. And part of the reason that there are so many moths is because of their incredible relationship with plants. But let's look at their life cycle first. We kind of learn about this in elementary school, but in my opinion, it's way weirder than kind of the surface level egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, adult. Because as the egg, they are laid on a specific plant called a host plant, like monarchs and milkweed. Many moths and butterflies will have only one or two families of plants that they use as a host for their larvae. That egg will hatch after a couple of days, hoping that nothing laid its eggs in the egg, because there are lots of things that do that. The caterpillar will chew, eat things, shed its skin up to like around 5 times throughout its that stage. And the last time it sheds its skin, there's a chrysalis underneath. I'm going to pass this around. This is a Ceanothus silk moth cocoon and chrysalis. The cocoons on the on the bottom are made out of silk. Same silk that we use in fabrics. In fact, we use a species of silk moth for their silk. They're a livestock. In fact, the silk moths that we use for that, Bombyx mori, they are entirely dependent on humans now. They do not exist in the wild. They cannot fly. We have bred them to the point where they are entirely dependent on us. So they will produce that cocoon around their chrysalis, and inside they will turn into soup, complete soup. They will just liquefy, and over time that liquid will kind of gurgle together to form the adult moth or butterfly. And soon they will emerge and repeat the cycle after mating. But if we look at, that's their life cycle, but if we look a little more spread out at their interactions with the ecosystem, we can see that they do some funky things. That right there is a yarrow plume moth, one of my favorite species that just kind of looks like a T, and they are a specialist. They use yarrow as their host, but they are also one of the best pollinators of yarrow. They will visit the flower, drink the nectar, go to the next flower, dropping off pollen, and helping it reproduce. Another kind of specialist is this, the Darwin's sphinx moth, which lives in Madagascar, and is the exclusive pollinator of the Darwin orchid, which has an incredibly long nectar tube attached to the flower. And that moth and the orchid, rely on each other. If the moth disappears, the orchid has no other pollinator. If the orchid disappears, the moth's tongue is too long to really effectively feed from any other plant. There are also generalists, like that sphinx moth in the corner, which I think are lovely. They're on my pants, because of course I have moth pants. But then you also have a different feeding strategy for an adult. Starvation. This big old Ceanothus silk moth here, it doesn't have a mouth. It did all of its eating as a caterpillar. So its only job after emerging from its cocoon is to find a mate. So pollination, in case you need a refresher, you have one flower over here making pollen, another flower over here, and pollen from this flower needs to get to this one. The flowers don't have legs. So they will rely on the moth, bee, beetle, bat in some places of the world, not here though, and will rely on the insect or the other pollinator to transfer that pollen, spreading the genetic material. And that spread of genetic material is actually incredibly important. It helps stop populations that are isolated from getting in a feedback loop of bad genetics. It's called gene flow, where DNA from one population can get dispersed to another. That increases resilience. It increases the ability of the population to survive things like climate change and predators. So pollination is an important part of the survival and reproduction of plants, as well as just through being able to help them make seeds, but also in helping their genetics be resilient. but we usually like to focus on the seeds and the foods that we get from pollinators because they're important. We rely on them quite directly. Other things rely on moths too. I think they're neat. I think they're great, but you can't argue that they're a really good food source. Bats, in particular, are incredible insectivores, eating many, many moths every night. But other things rely on moths. Bears eat moths. Lizards eat moths. Wasps, which can be pollinators, will lay their eggs inside the caterpillars. I'll show a little video of something like that later. Doug Tallamy, a cool scientist, found out that a chickadee, those just little guys, need thousands, 7,500 caterpillars to raise just 2 or 3 eggs. That's a lot of caterpillars. We need all that biomass, all those little caterpillars, and they need their host plants. Here's a little video. I'll show a little video later of a wasp carrying a caterpillar into its nest outside of her office. Very fun. But we're here to talk about dark matters. So we're going to focus in a little more on the eyes of the moths. And finally, we're going to get at why we're mad at Alan. The moth eyes are weird. They have, all those individual little dots. And each of those dots is like the entrance to a tunnel. And if we take a cross-section of that, we would see something that might look like this. If it's a daytime species or a diurnal, where there are little tubes leading to central light, a couple of different light receptors. Light can only come in through specific angles, or else it'll be absorbed by these little pigment things on either side. So light has to be coming in at a very specific angle. It gives them great detail. But nocturnal moths, they have something called a superposition eye, where they do not have those little walls of pigment, and instead, it's open. They have this clear space, which allows light to come in through more angles, coming into the main light receptor. That allows them to see well at night. They don't need as much light going in at specific angles because they can take in more data, but it comes at some costs. One of those costs is Alan, artificial light at night. So this little statistic is from the impact of artificial light at night on nocturnal insects. And it says that 88% of Europe and 40% of the United States experience nightly light pollution. We'll get into that later. Well, I won't. The people who know more about it will get into that. But this increase in light at night has a lot of adverse effects on moths because of their adaptations, the way their eyes work, and the way their predators work. Some of these negative impacts include temporal disorientation, where the moths will be like, wait, why is it light out? I can't go out. They'll miss their window, or they'll stay hiding away later into the evening. Or their predators will stay out later, eating them as they go by. You get spatial disorientation because these moths, they have a little simple eye in addition to their 2 big eyes on top of their head. And they use that to navigate at night using the moon and the stars. And the lights that humans put up everywhere can disorient that, making it difficult for them to navigate. And as we know, moths are attracted to lights, which can just disrupt their whole day. It's like traffic. They get stuck in traffic for an extra hour because they're flying around this night and they can't go off and find a mate or go off and find food because they're too busy being confused about what this glowing orb is. And their predators will be like, oh, there's a bunch of food stuck in traffic. I'm gonna eat there. The lights, because of the structure of their eyes, the lights can also blind or desensitize them. It's like when we go from a light room to a dark room, it takes our eyes a couple seconds to adjust, but it can take the moths up to half an hour for their eyes to readjust. And sometimes they never readjust. Their eyes are permanently damaged by the lights we use. It can harm their recognition, their ability to see the flowers that they're meant to be pollinating or the mates they're looking for. It can disrupt the very pheromones in the air. The light waves will agitate the pheromones, making them non-functional. And it can even stop the female moths from laying eggs. Or they'll lay all of their eggs in one spot, where a predator can eat all of them really quickly. So a lot of the problems created by our use of light really impact these moths. I made a little illustration to show how that makes the moths feel. Because they're not here, because they're failing to reproduce or being eaten, they aren't filling their ecosystem services. They aren't pollinating, they aren't reproducing and replenishing that food store for the bears or the lizards or the bats. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are lots of things that we can do to help moths out, to reverse the damage we're doing. Choices that we can make that will stop these things from happening. And I think that's great. I would hate to go up here and be like, it's all doom and gloom and there's nothing you can do about it. One thing that we're doing in our area is, other than just changing out light bulbs, we're also learning more about these creatures. This is Lepidopterus Dana Ross, who will be at our moth night at Willow Wit. He is a scientist who is studying moths in our area, figuring out what is out and about. What species do we have here? We have a lot. By the way, the next couple slides have QR codes, so if you want to look at some resources, get your phones out, take a picture. I'll get out of the way. So there are lots of things that we can do to help these insects out, because they do a whole lot for us, the places we live, and also I think they're just really weird and neat, and worth putting in a little extra effort to protect. Now, if you'd like to learn more about moths, then you can check out these papers here. I also have some copies up here that you're welcome to take a look at. I feel like they do a really good job of diving into the science behind why these creatures are being affected by our light. And feel free to ask any questions, probably after the presentations, because I've rambled on for too long. So if you have any questions, write them down, catch me afterwards. I'll be hanging out. And we have the Crest Fest is happening on Sunday the 12th. They're our partners for the Moth Night that we're running on the 17th. And then here is Moth Night on the 17th. Alrighty, well, I hope you learned something cool, and that is our kind of brief window into some of the cool things that we'll be learning more about tonight. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.
But thank you, Christina, and thank you, PPRV, for inviting us to join you for this installment of your Habitat Academy. Ethan, always fun. I always learn something. Thank you. It's the best opening act. Welcome all. It's good to see so many of you here interested in learning about why dark matters. So to mention a little bit about us, Sam and I just recently moved to the Applegate Valley. I grew up in New Jersey, so dark skies were not a thing that I grew up with. I was equidistant from New York City, Philadelphia, and Atlantic City. So unless there was a big power outage in the middle of summer on a dark night, I didn't know what a dark sky was. We lived for about 30 some years in Alaska, and you'd think, okay, yeah, you had dark skies there. Well, true, we did have dark skies there, but bear in mind, that's the part of the year that's pretty friggin' cold. So I don't think I ever really appreciated the darkness. And up there, when there's snow on the ground, there's so much reflected light that if you live near the big city of Anchorage like we did, you really didn't see much for stars. But anyway, so that's a little bit about where we came from. So before we had our group, Applegate After Dark, we had an event in the Applegate Valley. So a bunch of us wanted to have a star party at the Provault Recreation Site. It's a BLM managed facility along the Applegate River. And we just wanted to do a star party and learn something about bats and owls at the time. We didn't know these guys yet. And it just so happened that Bob Hackett with Travel Southern Oregon from right here in Talent came to our event to give us kind of the value added. He talked about dark skies and the dark sky movement and why darkness matters and all the cool places that you can go to in Oregon to experience dark skies. Well, at the end of the event, he's like, you know, you guys have really great dark skies here. And he really encouraged us to learn more and maybe do something about that. So, so we talked to the folks at Dark Sky Oregon, and just a few months later started our group. Our mission there, you can see, is to just educate and try to advocate for dark skies and better lighting, mostly in the Applegate Valley, but we realized we needed to be beyond. So we're happy to be beyond tonight here in Talent. It's our first time coming over the hills out of our little watershed to talk to folks on this side, because the I-5 corridor and developments here can make a big impact. I mean, that's the good news. You've got a long way to go, but you can really make a big change here. And I know you guys are doing some things already. Just briefly, some of our affiliations and partners. I just mostly want to mention the Applegate Partnership and Watershed Council is our nonprofit home, and they really support us in many ways so that we don't have to do a lot of the little things that just take away from the mission. I also want to mention, of course, our great partners, Christina. If you know Christina, you know how fortunate we are to have PPRV as a partner. Dark Sky Oregon supplied our amber light bulbs that we're giving away tonight. So if you haven't already visited Susan on the table back there, she will happily get you set up with some light bulbs, and there's some materials that you might want to check out that can help you learn more. All right. So let's start out maybe with just some basics. What is a dark sky? So this photo was taken at the Provolt Recreation Site, and at a very simple level, a dark sky is a place where you can see the Milky Way. And that's not just me saying that. The organization Dark Sky International certifies various categories of places, and one of them is dark sky lodging. And so if you're an Airbnb or somebody who has overnight accommodation, you can say to Dark Sky International, I'm interested in becoming certified. And the very first question they'll ask you is, can you see the Milky Way from your establishment? So it's kind of a filter that says, yes, you've got dark sky. We'll talk a little bit more later about better ways to do that. So dark skies then is basically the movement to combat light pollution. And before I go away from the Milky Way, I forgot to mention the little factoid that's kind of fun to know and tell, that 20% of the population in North America can see the Milky Way. 80% cannot. They live in a place where they cannot see the Milky Way. Big number. So it's something we should treasure and protect and try to not lose any more of the sky. Let's see. Sorry about that. Let me know if you can't hear me while I'm sitting down. I'll try to project. So just like water pollution, air pollution, and all the other forms of pollution, there are detrimental effects from light pollution. So let's dig in a little more. What is light pollution? It's driving the dark sky movement. So what is it? Well, it's the human-made alteration of outdoor light levels from those that occur naturally. And as you can see, there's kind of 4 categories or ways that you might classify light pollution. We'll talk about those in turn. So the first one is sky glow. And basically, it's the dome of brightness on the horizon over inhabited areas that obscures our view of the night sky. It's caused by particles in the atmosphere scattering light downwards or clouds reflecting light downwards. So this photo shows what that looks like in Central Oregon, which is kind of dark sky central, right, for us, central. Bend, Redmond, Prineville, and that's sky glow, pretty simple. Now this next one, Dark Sky Oregon produced a series of kind of fun animations. They're kind of like public service announcements. And I'm just going to use a couple of them to illustrate these other forms of light pollution. So let's see if I can get this one to play.
Bright, unshielded security lights don't provide much security. They blind us and cast sharp, dark shadows where anything can hide. Security lights that are less bright, more yellow in color, and shielded are better. Oh, look, there's a Sasquatch. The light is safer. We can see into the shadows because the glare is gone.
Kind of fun, right? So glare is excessive brightness that causes visual discomfort. And that film kind of highlights quite a few little things in the safety concern, why glare is particularly harmful to human eyes. And but the good news is that there's something that, it just made the video. Yeah, it's all right. So glare is one of those four. The next one I wanted to talk about is light trespass. And I've got a video for that one as well.
Oh man, not again. I really need to talk to my neighbor about this. Hey Ruff, I want to mention that your security light wakes us all up.
I'm sorry, I had no idea. Maybe I can shield my light and point it down.
That's a great idea. And how about using warm-colored bulbs that aren't so bright?
Yeah, okay. That's better.
So that's light trespass. And I'd have to say that when we do a tabling event to talk about dark skies, light trespass is probably one of the most commonly brought up issues. You know, people have a neighbor whose lights are intruding on their property, and they don't know how to talk to them, or they want to get it fixed, but how do you do that? Sam and I actually had a neighbor across the river, Applegate River from us, who had just built a warehouse, and on the outside of the warehouse they had really bright, totally outward pointing security lights. And I mentioned to them, and I guess I did it kindly enough, I think I probably talked about impacts to birds and other creatures, and not just all about me. But they very quickly, within a couple of weeks, would you say, Sam, they modified their lighting and had it turned downward, and were really good neighbors about it. So I think the message I wanted to impart there is, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times it might be just a lack of awareness. So take a brochure from Susan in the back and talk to your neighbors, and you might be able to get it fixed. Okay. The last form of, light pollution is light clutter, and that's just basically bright, confusing, and excessive groupings of light sources, kind of similar to the others. All right, so now we're kind of getting into, why does this darkness matter? Why is light pollution bad? I have this slide up here for two reasons. First of all, I just wanted to point out that we're trying to keep up to date with information. There's constantly new science happening, and both Dark Sky Oregon and Dark Sky International are collecting all this new data. They recently had a State of the Science talk, and passed that along to all their advocates. So it's current information, and it's, I think there's more than 6,000 peer-reviewed articles that they're combining into a database that anybody can access. The other thing I want to point out was that from those articles, they've kind of identified maybe 5, there's 2 that are kind of new I didn't put up there, but there's 5 areas where studies are starting to show the impacts of ALAN. And thank you, Ethan, for telling us about ALAN, so I don't have to say artificial light at night every time. Okay, so impacts to the environment and nocturnal habitats. In general, plants and animals depend on natural light cycles to govern life-sustaining behaviors such as reproduction, nourishment, sleep, and protection from predators. One of the maybe best documented and well-known examples is sea turtles. If you know anything about sea turtles, their nests are up at the top of sandy beaches, and they evolved over time in the absence of ALAN to, when they emerge from their nests, when the hatchlings are born, they've evolved to go to the brightest direction, which was the ocean, reflecting moonlight and starlight. Now that we have ALAN, we could be mad at ALAN, because it's drawing those little nestlings in the wrong direction, which is obviously not a good thing. We also know a lot about the impacts of ALAN to birds. Billions of birds die each year colliding with needlessly illuminated buildings at night. Some more fun factoids. 70% of North American birds are migratory, and more than 80% of those do so at night. Most songbirds are migratory at night. And why do they do that? Well, because nighttime has cooler temperatures, they're safer from predators, the air is calmer, but most importantly, they evolved to do that because of the light cues. So in the absence of artificial light at night, they can navigate by the moon and stars. ALAN causes them to go off course, and they're already doing these epic, migrations. So mortality impacts are due mainly to exhaustion as their navigation is disrupted and they become confused and alarmed by the light. They wind up in these unhelpful and dangerous habitats. Ethan talked about the moth, so I'm just going to skip this slide except to say that insect populations are key to sustaining healthy ecosystems. They're plummeting at an alarming rate, impacting all species that rely on insects for food or pollination. Research shows that light pollution is a contributing factor. Okay, kind of broadly about plants, amphibians, and fish. Trees exposed to artificial light at night bud earlier, lose their leaves later, and have shorter lifespans. Also, nocturnal reproduction of frogs is inhibited. The male frog sings, but not if there's artificial light in his area. Fish are also impacted. They have reduced survival due to stress and modified habits. Okay, this slide has kind of a lot of words on it, but I thought this was kind of interesting. The percentage of animals that are nocturnal, and of course bats are 100%. 90% of amphibians are nocturnal. That was surprising to me. 60% of mammals and invertebrates are nocturnal, and 30% of primates. So without going into a whole bunch more examples of how animals are impacted, this is more or less a summary of what potential impacts are to all living creatures. There's the possibility of being confused with their celestial navigation. There might be a disorientation or misorientation in their nocturnal movements. The artificial light at night can result in attraction or repulsion behaviors. It might also impact their predator-prey relationships. It could extend the activity of diurnal species into the nighttime hours, and it can interrupt circadian rhythms that govern the timing of breeding, nesting, migration, foraging. And a lot of these Ethan mentioned as well, so a little reinforcement there. Okay, the next area of study where there are impacts from ALAN is energy and resources. So Dark Sky estimates that 30% of all outdoor lighting in the US is wasted, mostly due to unshielded or excessively bright light. That translates to $3 to $7 billion wasted annually. And in the US alone, unnecessary lighting produces 21 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. We can do better, right? Okay, another impact from ALAN is loss of starry nights. And how do we know we're losing our starry nights? Well, fortunately, we have satellite imagery that can help. There's also some really fun citizen science projects going on. If you Google globe at night, it'll give you some ways of looking at the night sky to help them know what's happening in your little corner of the world. Here's an image of the US, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The brighter colors represent light pollution to a greater degree than the darker areas, and of course urbanized areas are just loaded with light pollution. In the Pacific Northwest, you can see that dark area, and we'll have a couple slides that zoom in. This first one, I just wanted to point out that here in Oregon, efforts have begun to certify, well, they haven't begun, they've managed to certify 9 different places in Oregon through the International Dark Sky Program. The biggest one is that red diamond labeled number 100. That's the Oregon Outback, and it's actually the largest international dark sky place or sanctuary, in the world. We are very fortunate. Pardon? Lakeview, I think, is kind of central. There's a little booklet in the back where Susan is that shows the whole Central Oregon dark sky certified places, and that's a good resource. Okay, so again, the dark area is the pristine night sky. And here I want to, so this is a similar image, right? It shows light pollution and darkness. I want to point out that yellow or orange, rather, line that says 2015. And then it shows 15 miles, and there's a red line that says 2023. So what this is demonstrating is that Oregon Outback, with the pristine night sky, has diminished in size already because of the growing light pollution in the Bend area. And it translates to, that loss translates to 1.7 miles per year. So at this rate, in 24 years, there will no longer be pristine sky overhead in the Oregon Outback. Okay, it's a little sobering. Another way to look at it, I like this slide, sorry. So if you were a baby today and you looked up at the sky and you could see 250 stars, by the time I'm 18 and look through that same window, I'm only going to be able to see 100 stars. It's a 9.6% loss or increase in light pollution or loss of the dark sky per year. So the other impacts from Allen are human health and wellness. For millions of years, the natural cycle of day and night has shaped life on Earth, including human health and well-being. With the rise of Allen, our natural rhythms are being disrupted, affecting sleep quality and contributing to a range of impacts. While more research is needed to understand how typical outdoor lighting plays a role, studies have found associations between higher levels of nighttime light and suppressed melatonin, shifted sleep-wake cycles, and even altered gene activity. So a little bit of science, and going back to, I guess, 4th grade science. Do you remember when you had one of those little triangular prisms and you held it into the sunlight and it caused the sunlight to spread out into the rainbow? Okay, how many of you learned Roy G. Biv, right, for the rainbow, red, orange, right? Anyway, well, this is the opposite. This is Vibgyor, violet to red. So when daylight is composed of all of these different wavelengths, and they're not all equal. So you can see the highest amount is what our eye sees to be blue light, and those are the shorter wavelengths compared to, at the red end of the spectrum, those are the longer wavelengths. And this is important because we can create light of any color or appearance that we want, and some of them are going to be better than others. So when we talk about artificial light at night, not all of it is going to be bad, but a lot of it that we're using now is bad because of this blue light. So the shorter wavelengths bounce off of things and scatter and cause that glare. So it's kind of important to understand that that's the culprit, is lights that have a heavy amount, because it's like daylight, and so we don't want daylight at night. We haven't evolved to have daylight at night. So the melatonin one is pretty well studied, partly because of indoor light and devices, but it applies to outside light as well. Melatonin is a naturally produced hormone that helps us sleep, but it's suppressed by the blue wavelength of light. So that's why during the daytime, you're less likely to be sleepy, because that blue portion of the spectrum is suppressing your melatonin production. And that little graph shows kind of what the studies have shown about melatonin. There was no blue light at night prior to humans lighting up the night. So it's a disruption to the sleep and circadian rhythm, and that's why they think it might also impact some genetic functions, and there's a possible link to chronic disease as well. It's all being studied. This is an area that's kind of cutting edge for dark sky and understanding outdoor lighting impacts. So here's where I turn it over to Sam, because there is hope. He's going to start talking about what you can do and how things are.
Okay, so better lighting design. We're not saying you have to get rid of your lights, but there's better and worse ways of doing lighting. So we'll walk you through that. Okay, there's 5 principles. This is dark sky, 5 principles. We'll walk through those. Useful, targeted, low-level, controlled, and warm-colored. Okay, those are the 5 we need to keep in mind. That's only those 5. Okay, useful. This is probably the most important one. Do you know why you've got that outdoor light? If you can't say, this outdoor light is there to do this, then it's probably unnecessary. And you'd be surprised. It's like, well, why do you have these lights on the outside of the house and on the porch and over the garage door? It's like, because that's what you do. Think about when you look at your lights, okay, I know what that's there for. It's so I can open the garage door. Okay, when do you open the garage door? What's the use for that? So just be sure, we should always know what that outdoor light is for. These are 4 of the most common ones: security, navigation, so we can see where we're walking, ambiance, so it looks nice, garden lights, and task lighting. Okay, I'm cooking on the grill. I need to see if the hamburger's done. So those are the common purposes. The next one is it targeted? So, and this is probably the most obvious thing we'll see, and we'll show you here shortly in talent and everywhere else, is you put up a big light and it goes everywhere, but it doesn't need to go everywhere. Where does it need to go to fulfill its purpose? Okay, so that's what we're looking for here. Okay, low level. So, and this is a big thing. People are like, well, I need my light because I got to be safe. Liz showed the video about glare. I'll show you the next. Well, I'll show you the next slide first. Okay. So if you look at those, they're the same color. I'm guessing all of us see the upper one looks a lot brighter, but the white is the same brightness across that entire slide. The reason those top ones look bright is because the colored circles around it are darker. So it's the contrast that makes things look bright and gives us glare. And so what you want is less contrast. Well, at night, you can't adjust the darkness. The dark is the dark. What you can adjust is the brightness of the light to reduce the contrast. Our eyes will see over about 20 decibels, so 20 doublings of light. So you can see by starlight, you can see in bright sunlight, but you can't see those at the same time. And so if you can adjust the light intensity down, then you can actually see better because you don't have that glare. This is an interesting, coming back to security, because this is a recurring theme people are very concerned about. In Chicago in the 90s, they did a study where they put additional lighting in a number of alleys, and then they collected crime data. Well, the blue was after they put the lights in, and the crime actually went up in the more well-lit alleys. So you can say, well, why? And their explanation was, well, criminals need to see too. So, but they expected the opposite. I guess intuitively you would expect, but that's not how it worked out. And since then they're saying, well, bright lights are not in and of themselves going to give you more security. Controlled is the next one. It's another way to minimize your light. So motion detectors or timers. Unfortunately, if you look at the left, most motion detector lights, like if you go on Amazon, say motion detector light, you're going to see lights like that. They're spotlights. They're bright white. They come on and they're going to send light everywhere. You can get modification motion detectors for a regular fixture. There's one at the back if you want to look at it that allows a shielded light to become a motion detector light. So it just shines its light down and only when it detects motion. Okay, and then warm colored. So longer wavelengths, they have a lot fewer detrimental effects. Liz already talked about that it's detrimental. Ethan talked about how it traps insects. So here's an example with the bugs trapped with the white light, very few around, which yellow lights have always been bug lights. Bugs don't see it that well. It's better for human sleep cycles. So this was a thing I pulled out of a study. Cool white LED and white induced considerably greater melatonin suppression than warm white and warm LEDs and compact fluorescence. So this is just reinforcing there's less impact on our sleep and our melatonin suppression with the longer wavelengths. It creates less eye glare. So those blue, those shorter wavelengths preferentially scatter. It's called the Tyndall effect. They scatter more off the tiny particles that are suspended in your eye. So that's when you see those really annoying white headlights. That's what's going on in your eye. And then sky glow. It's again scattering, but in this case it's Rayleigh scattering off particles in the atmosphere. And the blue, the shorter wavelengths, they scatter a lot better than the long wavelengths, the oranges and reds. So if we just go to orange and reds, we substantially diminish that amount of the sky glow, the picture Liz showed. Here's an example. There's a couple pictures taken in Bend. The left is the white lights in the Costco parking lot, and the right is the much longer wavelength lights at a hotel. Just how much less glare and scatter there is there. So this is a model they've done that said, where could we get to just using, so if we took the current situation we are today and just put shielding on, we'd get to the center amount of sky glow. And then if we went to the amber lights, in addition to that, then you'd get to that right hand. Just those two things would substantially reduce the amount of light pollution we're looking at in Oregon. So then the last thing I want to show you before we go to questions is a little demo. So we happen to have two lights. I'll apologize for the first one. Okay, this one's pretty standard. Coach light fixture, you'll see them on it. Tons of porches, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, you swap that out for a shielded fixture with an amber bulb. You can still see what you're doing. You can still see people because that light's going to reflect up on people. But this is probably a 5,000 Kelvin, and this is about a 1,800 Kelvin. So amber, much, much longer wavelengths, much less glare, and it won't attract the bugs, won't attract the birds. So it's that really pretty easy. All right, that's it. Let's see. It's better, but you can still see it. So if you can see a light bulb directly, then it's coming straight at you. It's not, unless the intent is to come straight at you. So I'll show you some examples now. Okay, so now you know the principle. So a couple weeks ago, Liz and I came over to Talent about 9 o'clock at night. And so we just turned off I-5, and the first place we pulled in there was the truck stop. And so there's no question they need to illuminate their forecourt here. But you look at those lights, those lights are shining probably up on the mountain. So this is all the wasted light and energy. Okay? So I turned around, took this picture. Again, those lights are going straight out. A lot of them are probably shining straight up. That light is on its way to, the Andromeda Galaxy. Saw a number of the street lights here, and they're a lot of them are white and they're going straight out. I'm not criticizing Talent. Almost every place you'll see this. There's another one. Coach light in king size. There's some more white lights. The street light, at least it's more amber. It's an old high pressure sodium, but it's which is better, but it's also shining straight out. There were a few good examples. Don't want to make it all negative. Don't know what this place is, but this had decent lighting here. Another good example down the road. You can see it's like more amber colored, shielded, going down. Okay, so what can you do? Inventory your own lighting. Okay, get a couple light bulbs tonight, swap them out for amber lights. That's the first thing. Super easy. Talk to your local representatives, mayor, city council, neighbors, and say, spread the word. As Liz said, probably 98% of this is just complete lack of awareness. So this is what we're doing here tonight. We're trying to spread awareness and say, this is pollution. And spread awareness to family, friends, colleagues, and absolutely everyone. Okay, so this is a kind of reinforcing solid waste pollution. We don't do that anymore. Water pollution, we don't do that anymore. Air pollution, we mostly don't do that anymore. But light pollution, I would say we're now where maybe awareness of air pollution was in the 1960s. We're like, oh, I guess it is pollution. Now we're just starting to say, okay, maybe we need to do something about it. We're starting to understand the health effects, the environmental effects. So turn down the light, turn up the life. Don't have noise pollution. All right. Leave it with a quote from Van Gogh.